Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à chacune et à chacun. It was a pleasure to host President Biden today. We share a long history with the United States. We shaped much of the last century, and now it's time to shape this century. Just after President Biden's election, I said the EU and US should build a new founding pact for a stronger alliance and a better world. And we got to work immediately. The European Council had a strategic debate last December on our transatlantic relationship. We hosted President Biden at a virtual meeting in March, and then our teams worked and negotiated very intensively in the last weeks and hours to convert our intentions into very concrete and operational decisions. And the result is a far-reaching joint statement, and we are happy to announce excellent news on our trade disputes. I'm certain Ursula will say more about that. Today, we focused on 4 key areas of cooperation: COVID, climate change, trade, investment technology, and democracy, peace, and security. First, we want to send COVID-19 to the history books, and there is only one way: the international cooperation. And we must deliver on this by making sure that the world's population has access to vaccine. We can do this in 4 key ways. First, through the exports. Second, through COVAX. Third, via donations. And finally, via the manufacturing capacity. And our goal is clear. We want to vaccinate at least 2/3 of the world's population by the end of 2022. The joint EU-US COVID Manufacturing and Supply Chain Task Force will help achieve this goal by boosting global vaccine production and keeping supply chains open. Learning the lessons from COVID-19 also means learning how to prepare for future pandemics and health crises, and we discuss a possible treaty on the future pandemics. Global recovery must mean recovery for all and not just a select few. We also have a duty and an interest to assist and to support less developed countries, not only to fight COVID-19, but also to recover economically. On a aussi eu l'occasion d'adresser le thème du changement climatique. Nous avons décidé de mettre en place un groupe d'action de haut niveau pour le climat entre l'Union européenne et les États-Unis, afin de renforcer de manière la plus concrète possible cette coopération. L'Union européenne, depuis pas mal d'années maintenant, y compris ces derniers mois, a affirmé son leadership international en matière de changement climatique. Nous avons abordé bien sûr les questions liées au prix du carbone, les questions liées au déploiement de la finance verte et à l'importance de mobiliser les secteurs privés. Nous avons aussi eu l'occasion de mettre l'accent sur l'importance de soutenir, s'agissant de ce défi lié au changement climatique, les pays en développement. C'est ce que nous faisons aussi au départ de l'Union européenne et de nos États membres, en ayant déjà mobilisé des montants significatifs afin d'atteindre cet engagement collectif qui vise à mobiliser 100 milliards d'euros chaque année afin de soutenir les pays en développement. Enfin, bien sûr, la question de la biodiversité a été évoquée en préparation des prochains rendez-vous internationaux sur le sujet. Nous avons réaffirmé notre détermination à mettre un terme à la détérioration en matière de biodiversité et au contraire à réussir à relancer une dynamique plus favorable et plus positive sur ce sujet-là. Nous avons aussi eu l'occasion d'aborder bien sûr les questions de commerce, les questions d'innovation, les questions digitales, et là aussi encore un signal opérationnel et concret de la relance énergique de cette coopération avec les États-Unis. Nous mettons en place un conseil pour le commerce et la technologie. On a eu l'occasion d'aborder la manière dont on va envisager le travail pour coopérer davantage sur ces sujets-là. On a aussi eu l'occasion d'évoquer les réformes nécessaires dans le cadre de l'Organisation mondiale du commerce et puis bien sûr à la suite du travail préparatoire mené par les ministres des Finances dans le cadre du G7, on a pu aborder l'importance de progresser pour davantage de level playing field de manière générale, mais aussi pour progresser en matière de fiscalité internationale davantage équitable. Ce sont des sujets pour lesquels l'Union européenne depuis plusieurs années a fait avancer le débat d'un point de vue politique, d'un point de vue démocratique. C'est aussi lié à des décisions que nous avons prises en lien avec le prochain budget européen et en lien avec la manière de financer la relance post-Covid. Enfin, en quelques mots, nous avons pu aborder aussi notre ambition d'être très déterminés à promouvoir nos valeurs fondamentales démocratiques, l'état de droit, un modèle international fondé sur des règles, la coopération internationale. Nous avons pu aborder un certain nombre de sujets liés à la sécurité globale ou à la sécurité régionale. Par exemple, la question de l'accord nucléaire avec l'Iran a été évoquée, puisque c'est un sujet dans le cadre duquel l'Union européenne, depuis de nombreuses années, joue un rôle que je crois important pour tenter de maintenir un canal de dialogue et maintenir une capacité de prévenir des risques d'escalade qui seraient extrêmement dangereux pour l'ensemble de la région et pour la sécurité globale. D'un mot, vous le voyez, dans le cadre de son élection à la présidence, le président Biden a affirmé l'Amérique est de retour sur la scène internationale. Nous prenons au mot cet engagement, nous réjouissons que les États-Unis soient de retour, nous nous réjouissons aussi du travail concret, intense, dense que nous avons pu avoir aujourd'hui, qui est une étape importante et qui a été possible parce qu'il y a un travail gigantesque qui a été réalisé depuis les derniers mois par nos équipes respectives avec les équipes américaines afin de préparer ce moment et de permettre que les pas en avant significatifs puissent être engagés. C'est un point de départ. On va évidemment continuer à intensifier la coopération pour promouvoir nos valeurs, pour défendre nos intérêts. Nous sommes lucides. Nous avons maintenant un partenaire avec lequel nous pouvons être engagés. Il y aura par moments des sujets plus difficiles, des sujets plus délicats, mais il y aura, je pense, une volonté politique partagée, d'écoute mutuelle et de capacité à tenter de dégager des solutions dans l'intérêt mutuel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam President.
Thank you very much. Indeed, we had an excellent meeting among friends and allies. And this meeting started with a breakthrough on aircraft. The agreement we have found now really opens a new chapter in our relationship because we move from litigation to cooperation on aircraft, and that after almost 20 years of disputes. It is the longest trade dispute in the history of WTO. I remember very well it started when I got my first phone call by President Biden in February, and there we jointly decided to solve this problem. And today I really want to thank our negotiating team, the US Trade Representative Catherine Tai and the Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis. They have been instrumental in facilitating a solution. Today we can say we have delivered. In general on trade, the bilateral trade and investment between the European Union and the United States of America is unrivaled. Despite the pandemic, trade between the European Union and the US was worth almost €1 trillion in 2020. And to preserve this, we discussed that we need to adapt to an even more competitive and more diversified global environment. And therefore, we decided to establish a EU-US Trade and Technology Council. We want, of course, to expand EU-US trade and investments, but we also want to discuss how we avoid new unjustified technical barriers and how to cooperate in areas with high potential from our economy, especially, of course, in the digital technologies. And the Trade and Technology Council will be a forum to cooperate and align on global tech matters. So whether it's artificial intelligence, to set our standards and promote a human-centric artificial intelligence, or be it the risks of cybersecurity, or be it in the environmental field, for example, clean technologies in this forum of trade and technology. We will, at the beginning, of course, focus on areas that are the most urgent. For example, on semiconductors. You know that these are a key component in many industries with significant supply constraints, and here it's really worthwhile to work together and to improve the situation. Or we will work on platforms and artificial intelligence, areas of ever-increasing importance to our economies and our societies. And as I've mentioned, the cybersecurity, a threat we both face and a threat that requires a common response. The second topic I want to mention in this overall trade context is indeed the discussion we had on fair international corporate taxation. And we really commend the leadership of President Biden that he has shown with this proposal of the first and the second pillar. We jointly aim to build on the recent agreement at G7 finance ministers level, and we fully stand behind the OECD process. So we have discussed, of course, the first and the second pillar, but how does that go with our digital levy? And here we made clear and discussed that our proposal will be non-discriminatory. It will not lead to double taxation once the Pillar 1 of the OECD agreement is in place. On 232, the steel and aluminium topic, we have decided to establish a working group to make sure that we have a solution as soon as possible. We've discussed it broadly, and I think there will be good work in progress with the aim to move forward in this difficult field within months. On the topic of health, we've been discussing how to end, of course, the pandemic everywhere and for everyone. This is a joint priority. This is a joint responsibility. We agreed that we have to move faster and quicker to help vaccinate the world. To get there, and you know all the issues we had in the past 6 months to get there, we decided to establish a EU-US vaccines task force to really work on the details, if there are bottlenecks in the supply chains and other issues. It will help to identify and solve problems that are connected to the production of the vaccines or also production of therapeutics. And we agreed that it is necessary to cooperate much more to build capacity worldwide in regions where there is no production capacity right now, but where we need over time the possibility to manufacture vaccines. There was clarity that for that it is necessary not only to bring private investment and de-risk this private investment into these regions, but also the question of how to transfer technology know-how to these regions, so the whole discussion around the TRIPS agreement. And finally, that we jointly commit to maintain supply chains open and maintain supply chains secure, because these ingredients are necessary if you want over time to establish new manufacturing capacities and really create these new ecosystems in regions where they haven't been so far. Another major step forward is that we will now work together more closely on the big questions on how to reform WHO. We know that for the World Health Organization, a renewed engagement is necessary. We know that WHO needs stronger capacities for the detection of outbreaks, for example, of COVID-19, the early notification, the early warning system, to really speak of preparedness and appropriate response. And here the investigative power of WHO must be increased. We've learned our lessons from the past. We know that we lost time at the beginning of the pandemic, and this should not happen anymore. On climate change, the European Union and the US are natural partners in the fight for our planet's future. And science tells us very clearly that we have to hurry up. We need to do more, and we need to do it quickly. So I'm very pleased that we are establishing today a EU-US higher-level climate action group. The main focus is really to work together on the momentum that has been created by the Earth Summit and really work on the climate diplomacy so that we have many, many countries going with us towards the COP26 in Glasgow and really forging the ambitious goals we want to achieve at COP26. We were briefly discussing that we also need a robust global framework for sustainable investment and reforms. We saw on both sides that there is a lot of private capital out there that is looking for true green investment, not greenwashing, but true green investment. And to work on such a global framework that defines it, as we've done and started it with our taxonomy here in the European Union, this is a common goal because we know that the private sector can play a decisive and will play a decisive role in our fight against climate change. Embedded in this is the fact that if we want to fight climate change, if we want to be successful, then we need innovation and technologies. And for that, I welcome that we have committed to work towards a transatlantic green technology alliance. So to make sure that on both sides we are aware of the latest development, we can discuss how we enable breakthrough technologies or amazing innovations to be competitive at the market and to work on their market entrance, because we will rapidly need these new technologies if we want to fight climate change. Last but not least, we were discussing the global pricing on CO2, that it is necessary overall to have over time a global price on CO2, be it through the emission trading system or be it through taxation. And in this context, I explained the logic of our carbon border adjustment mechanism. And we discussed that we will exchange on it and that WTO might facilitate this. I've been briefly touching the reform necessity in WTO. And here we also know that there is a huge need to improve an environmental agenda within WTO. So this was the overall scope of this discussion. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Madam President. We have a lot of journalists joining us virtually, but I'll take a few questions first here in the room, since this is new again, having journalists physically present. Anne, please. From ZDF.
Thank you. Anne Gelinek, ZDF, German television. A question for the President of the European Commission. You've been talking about the return to excellent trade relations between the EU and the US. So why was it not possible to also get rid of the taxes on aluminium and steel? What is the problem here? And on your discussions with President Biden, how much pressure did you feel from the US side to side with them on the topic of China and try to talk harder and tougher on China than the European Union does it?
Well, if I take perhaps the second question first, China has been a big topic at G7. So there extensively we have been discussing it. And we are very clearly aligned that the European Union says, yes, there are ways where we cooperate with China, for example, on the common goal to fight climate change. We are strong economic competitors without any questions. And for that, we need tools. We need tools for the security within the digital market, for example, the 5G toolbox, but also foreign direct investment screening, so that it is very clear that we have the necessary tools to ensure that there is a level playing field and that we otherwise, if this is not the case, can protect our markets. And, of course, the fact that if it comes to the system itself, it comes to human rights and human dignity, we are systemic rivals, without any question. And it was very clear in G7 that we have to speak up on that, that we have to call on that and be very clear that this is the main issue that clearly divides us. The first part of your question is concerned, first of all, it was good to hear that the US clearly agrees with us that the European Union is not a national security threat. So we are happy about that. Secondly, we agree that we both want indeed to preserve a vibrant steel and aluminium industry. This is important. And we need to work together to address the serious global overcapacity problems we face, especially from non-market economies. We are all aware of that. Within that, we have now created a space to find a solution by suspending the EU countermeasures for 6 months. So this gives us room to sit down, to discuss more detailed, to find a solution that preserves our industry and that restores our historical trade flows. And we are aware, and our American friends are also aware, that we need to do this before the suspension of our countermeasures expire.
Thank you. Lotte, you're next.
Thank you. Lotte Mejlhed from TV2 Denmark for both presidents. What is the EU message on Russia for Biden to take along to his meeting with Putin tomorrow? Thank you.
The first message is very simple. We are united. The 27 member states, we had an in-depth debate a few weeks ago about Russia, and we condemn the illegal activities, the disruptive activities of Russia, point one. Point two, we want to implement the 5 guiding principles, especially we think it's important to play a strong role at the level of the Eastern Partnership, but also in the Western Balkans in order to support robust democratic institutions in those countries. And indeed, I think that with the United States, with some other like-minded partners, it's important not only to react when we face authoritarian regimes trying to put pressure on us. It's important to have a proactive strategy in order to promote our values and to defend our interests.
Yes, indeed, Russia is Europe's biggest neighbor. And we are very clearly united in our approach to our biggest neighbor. We must say that the EU-Russia relationship is currently more on a negative spiral. And you're all aware of the development of the last years. We would like to turn that into, if I may say so, more predictable relationship. And we are very clear that there are 3 ways to approach that. Here too, clear pushback on breaches of international law, clear pushback on breaches of human rights. Secondly, to constrain Russia's attempts to undermine us. And thirdly, to engage there where it's possible. For example, on a matter of public health, or if it's a question of people-to-people contacts. But as I said, currently the EU-Russia relationship is on a negative spiral, and this is also what we conveyed very clearly to President Biden.
I have a question coming from Angela Mauro, who's joining us for the Huffington Post virtually. Angela.
Yes, thanks, Farid. I want to go back to the steel and aluminium tariffs, which are also an heritage of the Trump era. I'd like to know in what terms did you discuss this at the meeting, and what have you decided? Because it is not clear from the previous question, at least to me. Thanks.
Do you want me? Yeah. So on the steel and aluminium, indeed, it is something that is coming from the area of the former president. Here, it is important. Our teams have been working now over the weekend, day and night, mainly to solve the aircraft issue, and they were successful in that. And they have agreed that, as you know, the European Union could have been able to take countermeasures right before this summit. We were entitled to that. And we, by purpose, said, no, we will not do that. We will just suspend our countermeasures that we are entitled to take for 6 months, so beginning of December. And with that spirit, we've said, let's sit down, let's sort out together within this time period how we can get rid of this nuisance and this issue. But we need a little bit of time because it's more complex than to solve it within a weekend. And the first priority was on the aircraft dispute. So I'm confident that we will find a solution. We also were very clear that the topic of overcapacity is not a question of European steel and aluminium, because our export to the United States dropped. So it's another topic. And therefore, I think we are in good talks to proceed and as soon as possible get rid of this problem.
I have another question. Bonjour, Griselda. Pastor, tu avais une question.
You had a question, Griselda Pastor.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci
beaucoup, c'est Griselda Pastor de la radio espagnole.
Yes, I'm from Radio Española.
Comme ça marche. Je voudrais aussi savoir si l'accord avec Boeing fixe déjà les conditions sur lesquelles les compagnies d'aviation pourront, dans ces cas, les investissements recevoir de l'argent public. Si ça, c'est déjà clair. Et profitant que vous êtes là, je sais bien qu'on a un rendez-vous à 18h, mais j'aimerais bien savoir si face aux investissements prévus pour le président des États-Unis face à la crise Covid, vous croyez que les investissements du plan de coopération européen vont être suffisants? Et si vous êtes satisfaite de que ça soit aujourd'hui que vous pouvez présenter le premier plan de coopération approuvé à niveau européen? Merci beaucoup.
La deuxième question que vous avez posée, le plan de relance, le budget européen, sont des instruments extrêmement solides et robustes.
The tools we've created are solid and robust, and you have to look at the whole picture if you want to compare, carry out a comparative exercise between the US and the EU. You've got to look on the EU side as whatever is going to be leveraged in addition to what there is at the EU level by the 27 member states. In most member states there are social protection measures, some of which have been around for a very long time. So social protection systems are well established, and that has to be factored in. So we will all continue to work in our various institutional functions to make sure, of course, that national parliaments do approve the own resources legislation, which in what will in fact have been record time. It is excellent that we've got this far this quickly. We will, of course, analyse the plans submitted. As we have decided, at least 30% of what has been earmarked for climate, 20% for the digital transition. So we're putting our money where our mouths are, and we now want to make the right choices in terms of concrete investments. But for the rest, I would like to give Ursula the floor.
Griselda, what your question of the aircraft dispute is concerned, or the no more dispute of the aircraft topic. I think I mentioned that we have installed a working group that is detailing out and discussing on a case-by-case level whether the level playing field is kept or whether there are state aid issues. So it's a very practical approach that has been chosen, and you see there was a strong will really to solve that issue. What your second question is concerned, if I got it right, you were asking about the overall financial support. Here, I think two figures are interesting. We have been looking at what is the fiscal support of the European Union on the European level, of course the member states level, and what we call the automatic stabilizers in the European Union for the years 20, 21 and 22. This will sum up around about to 18% of our GDP. And if you compare that with the same levels in the United States and the plans that have been launched by President Biden or announced by President Biden, and you sum it up over the 3 years, you come to a result of 20% of GDP. So that shows that we're pretty much aligned in our policies, and that we share the same approach that right now we should not pull out prematurely, pull out of the supportive measures. We should not repeat the mistakes of the last big financial crisis, but we should maintain the fiscal support also through 22, knowing that policies then have to be more differentiated, so to prepare for the years to come where the fiscal support will be reduced.
I'll take one more question from the room. Beda, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Beda Romano, Sole 24 Ore. I had a question to Mrs. von der Leyen. You met Mr. Biden for a number of days from Friday onwards. Did you have the possibility of explaining to him the concept of European sovereignty, of strategic autonomy? And did he ask you more information about these two concepts, and what kind of reaction to your explanation? Thank you very much.
So we did not touch on this specific term, but it was impressive to see and to listen to President Biden, how clearly he, first of all, was acknowledging that, yes, we know that the last 4 years were difficult and the world has changed, but Europe has also changed. But there's a second important point. We are long-standing friends and allies, and we share many, many same worldviews, and we share the same values. And the third point, which was for me impressive, I don't know how it was for you, but the way he explained to the two of us how much he cares about Europe, because as he said, we Americans need Europe, and the same goes for us. We Europeans need our American friends, because these are the democracies who uphold the values and who stand up for the fundamental rights and the values we really cherish and respect. And this atmosphere shows there is the knowledge that we are different, of course, but we are one, if you look at fighting for democracy.
Moi, je voudrais ajouter sur ce point-là que nous devons renforcer le projet européen pour nous-mêmes, bien sûr, mais aussi pour la robustesse de nos alliances. Et il est bon pour l'Alliance transatlantique qu'il y ait des partenaires robustes et solides autour de la table. Et effectivement, le temps passé, que ce soit dans le cadre du G7 ou également les quelques heures de réunion qui ont eu lieu aujourd'hui, ont été l'occasion de se regarder les yeux dans les yeux, de sentir aussi la sincérité dans notre approche commune, de considérer quelques-unes des priorités qui ont été évoquées, plus d'impact positif pour la démocratie, plus d'engagement pour la prospérité, plus d'engagement pour la sécurité et pour la stabilité. Et en cela, ce moment est un moment effectivement important avec les premiers actes, on en a parlé, qui ont été posés des messages généraux ou généreux, et nous allons continuer dans cet esprit-là, mais encore une fois, en étant lucides sur le fait que certains sujets seront bien sûr plus difficiles, mais il me semble que sur l'essentiel, effectivement, une volonté partagée de travailler ensemble.
Thank you, Mr. President and Madam President. Thanks, and this concludes our press conference for today. See you again next week for our European Council.
needed no one else. I thought I was happy, living all by myself and out of the blues. I walked into my life, had no expectations, now let me down. Very few reservations, my feet solid on the ground, and then out of the blues, I walked into my life. I thought I knew how to keep heartache away from me. I had so many lessons living in my memory. I swore I'd taken my very last chance. Now I find myself lost in the dance of romance. Now we're getting married, I do is what we'll say. Gonna stand before the preacher on Valentine's Day with you, baby. 'Cause you walked into my life. I thought I knew how to keep heartache away from me. I had so many lessons living in my memory. I swore I had taken my very last chance. Now I find myself lost in the dance of romance. Thought I needed no one, I needed no one else. I thought I was happy, living all by myself and out of the blues. I walked into my life. With you, baby, you make everything all right. Oh, baby, since you came into my life, 'cause you came out of the blue.